Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of American Gods, as well as the latest episodes of Twin Peaks. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the special shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of American Gods, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episodes of Twin Peaks. I have to do that. I keep forgetting it's doubling each time. But nevertheless, the first thing we're going to talk about is this week's episode of American Gods. A very good episode. Obviously, just kicking up the weird and craziness, but a really, really good episode. Obviously picking up right where last week's episode left off of, got Laura's side of the story. And now it's like, Shadow's in front of her and she's like, hey, puppy. And he's like, hey, babe, the fuck are you doing here? It's like kind of trying to process it, which is like, I'll admit, Shadow handled that situation a lot better than anyone else. It's like your dead, wife is like there in front of you, you're like, man, whoo, that's not the reaction a lot of people would have. But he was calm. I mean, granted, everything that's weird, because Shadow's in that weird place where it's like weird stuff has been happening, but at the same time, it's like he doesn't quite believe, but he's on the cusp of believing, and it's like, yeah, okay, some weird shit's going on. And I guess, I wonder, is that the reason why he didn't tell Mr. Wednesday? Or is it just kind of like, that's kind of my secret? Because, because there was in that moment he came back into the room later on and she wasn't there. I was like, yeah, he's going to think he's crazy. It's like, Laura, it's like, she's like, I'm in the bath. I'm like, okay, good. I mean, he doesn't 100% think he's crazy. But maybe if he thought, like, maybe if Mr. Wednesday came in there and be like, oh, he doesn't see anything. I really would have loved to find out what it was. You did notice that he was like, what's that smell? It's like, smells like something. It's like, okay, so it's like, you can smell, I mean, she is kind of a walking corpse, so of course she kind of smells a little. But I did like her, like, Shadow's like, okay, so tell me what's up. Why did this whole thing happen with you and Robbie? She's like, okay, we could talk about that, or we could talk about the fact is how it's a miracle that your wife is alive. Like, right? Isn't that awesome? It's like, in all honesty, like, what did she think was going to happen? Like, it does seem like she thought, I guess she could fix things, because it's like, oh, no matter what happened, the fact of the matter is, I love you. I mean, granted, it took me dying to realize how much I love you, but I love you. And it's kind of like, I guess in her mind, it's like, that's all that matters. It's one of those, I think in her mind, maybe she's thinking like, oh, be kind of a fairy tale thing where it's like, oh, love conquers all, no matter what happens. Like, I'm not your puppy anymore. Like, the fact is you cheated on me. Like, you said you were going to wait, which she even rationalizes like, oh, the fact of the matter is, like, it wasn't a lie at that time, because, I truly believed I could, no one wants to think like, oh, I can't wait for you. Because in his mind, it's like, it would have been better off if you had just left me for Robbie. Like, if you wanted to, it's like, he said it before, like in the first episode, I would have let you go, which, as we found out last episode, and she kind of reiterates this episode, like, what? Leave Shadow for you, Robbie? You're an idiot. Like, okay, that's why she gave him, in her words, the goodbye blowjob. But it's like, what did you think was going to happen? Do you think he was going to welcome you back with open arms? I guess she thought, I guess it's a combination of everything, because for her, I mean, once again, like, every time she looks at him, he's her shining light. Everything else in the world doesn't really look like that. I mean, granted, Shadow's the only thing we've ever seen through her eyes, but even then, I think that still applies. Like, the fact is, that's the only person she sees through her eyes like that is Shadow. And I don't know whether it's connected to the coin, or whether it's just because he truly is like the life, like, maybe it's kind of a situation where the light shows you what's most important to you. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I'm missing in some of the dialogue or stuff like that I'm not quite processing. And like, oh, this is them putting out their plain as day. But it's like, to me, a lot of it seems like it's kind of open up to interpretation, like what really things mean until someone outright explains it. Really quick side note, I really like that beginning. I don't know what kind of style you would call that. Would that be considered CG animation? Nevertheless, I thought it was aesthetically pretty, and just how the story was kind of unfolding like that. So basically the premise of, like, gods, being forgotten. And I guess obviously that plays a big role in this episode, I guess. I mean, to a certain extent, because it's like, well, I'll finish up with what I was saying about Laura and everything. It's kind of interesting too, because like the fact is, it's a situation where it's like when she kissed Shadow, she's like, I can taste. So it's like, because she smokes a cigarette, it's like, I don't taste anything. This isn't doing anything for me. It's like, yeah, this is a habit and everything. It usually made me feel better, but it's like, I don't taste anything. I don't feel anything. When she kissed Shadow, she felt alive. He could feel her, she could feel him, and like her, as we can see, like her heart started beating. So it's like breathe life into her? And is it because something special about Shadow, or is it just because he's so important to her, you know, connected to the light and everything? Maybe that's what that is. Like, the longer they're together, the more life just kind of breathed back into her. She can't come back to life. She can't be filled with life, but probably momentary moments of being like alive again. I do love the fact is that when Mads showed up, he's like, yo, give me back my freaking coin. What, she just flicks her finger and knocks him to the back wall. And he does the same thing too and breaks his hand. I'm like, dude, that's insane how stupidly strong she is. I also thought it was kind of interesting she didn't tell Shadow. That was kind of something I made note of too. She didn't tell Shadow about the fact is that she's the one that saved him from those no-faces, like in the first episode. I guess, you know, it's like if she had told him the truth, it's like, I don't know if she quite would have believed, you know, that Shadow would be able to handle it or something. She's like, oh, maybe that'd be too much. Or maybe she's like, no, I don't want Shadow to look at me any differently. Like, it's already weird enough, the whole being dead and everything. Plus, I have all the scars from when they had to, you know, did an autopsy on me and everything. And obviously, when her arm fell off last episode. But also, it's just like, you know, it's like that would probably seem, it's like, oh, Shadow might be thinking like, oh, wow, I saw what happened. Those things were ripped apart. You did it. It's like, oh my God, you're not my wife anymore. You're this monster or something like that. Maybe that's one way she feels like he might interpret and see her that way, which, I mean, who's to say if he would? I mean, would that make a difference at all? I mean, would it just add more fuel to the fire in a situation of like, yeah, we're not in a good place right now because we got a lot of issues, including the fact that you slept with the guy that I considered my best friend. She even put it in time frame, like, points of, like, how long did she wait for Shadow? It was, like, 13 months. Which is, like, that's kind of interesting. I would have expected you to be very vague about it. It's like, I wasn't expecting you to give an exact, like, yep, 13 months. I was like, oh, okay. I guess in that particular situation, when your husband's locked up, it's like, obviously you're going to keep tally of that type of, nevertheless. But when Mad showed up, it's like, give me my coin back. And she's like, dude, I'm not giving you your coin back. You know, he's like, oh, I could give you all these other coins and everything. She's trying to explain everything about Mr. Wednesday. It's like, you shouldn't trust him. She's like, I don't. Well, your husband does, and he's an idiot for trusting him and everything. Which is kind of funny, because later on, Mr. Wednesday is like, yeah, the fact of the matter is, like, Mads is completely against everything I'm doing, but it's like, the fact of the matter is he's a leprechaun, and unfortunately, he's at a disadvantage because he's a complete and utter idiot. But, and it kind of seems like that's the case in this one, but it's like he's trying to do everything to get his coin back, even at one point drowning her in the tub, but the cops show up. Obviously, that's kind of in the Shadow and Mr. Wednesday situation, but I'll get to that soon. And he's choking her, and he's like, oh, I know her, guys. She's alive. And she's in the tub dead. He's like, you're an asshole, dead wife. You're an asshole. It's like, honestly, that was pretty good on her part, playing dead like that. I was like, that's pretty impressive. The advantages of being undead and everything, that was pretty sweet. I felt so bad for him. It's like, you should have seen that coming. You should have. It's not like she would have been, you know, just kind of like her way of giving you the middle finger. It's just so good. He ended up bringing up something interesting too, like kind of along the lines of being a zombie. Like, I don't know what we really classify her as. Like, I've kind of kept referring to her as like, oh, a zombie. Is the fact that eventually her skin will fall off. And the fact is she keeps soaking in warm water too long. Like, the cell tissues are slowly dying. Obviously, they'll die even more, but eventually her skin will fall off. And then he talked about just reaching underneath her rib cage and pulling the coin out because it's actually inside of her. I was wondering where it was this entire time. I was like, oh yeah, it's inside of her. There's that. Obviously, we see her kind of waking up at the end of the episode, and she's kind of breathing on the window, because I guess on some level she was hoping, like, you know, maybe in a situation like after kissing Shadow, maybe like some life came back to her. She tries to breathe on the glass, but nothing happens, no fog or anything, because there's no breath. So I'm guessing she was hoping on some level that it was like, okay, there's some part of me that's alive again because of Shadow. You know, now it makes you wonder, is it a situation of like, are you going to be with Shadow because you do truly love him? Or is it some innate thing, subconscious thing, you know, being undead and everything, where it's like you have to be with him because he's the only person that breathes life into you? Like I said, are they two separate things? Are they actually the same thing? Is she believing it to be love when in actuality it's a drive for something else? The fact that she can't taste anything, like, we've yet to see her consume human flesh or eat brains or anything like that. So like I said, she's not full on zombie. It's probably a situation where it's just like her body will slowly decay, and it's like, because she can't taste anything. I mean, granted, we don't know. Maybe she just hasn't gotten a taste of like the right thing. Like, maybe everything tastes like nothing in her mouth until she starts eating people, and it's like, oh my God, people are so delicious. Luckily enough for her, she didn't get embalmed for a second time. I'm sure she really wouldn't have appreciated it, especially after coming back and experiencing it. Last episode, obviously, like, I'm sure she wouldn't want to go through that again. I feel bad for that morgue dude because she, like, broke the door off. Don't know if he died. I mean, that metal door hit him pretty hard, so either knocked the air out of him or might have broken a rib cage or something. I mean, could have killed him. I mean, it's not like she really bothered to check on him. But obviously on the other side of the episode, we deal with Shadow and Mr. Wednesday getting arrested. Which I love, because the fact is, it's like, yeah, it's like, where are you arresting us? Bank robbery. And then Shadow looks at Mr. Wednesday like, you son of a, you was talking about the fact is no one to catch us. Like, oh, we got caught and everything. So basically someone tipped them off. It's like, oh yeah, we got a fax that basically was like, yeah, this is your exact location. And I was like, oh, okay. Because basically we kind of got a feel for like, yeah, the fact of the matter is Mr. Wednesday is running from some pretty powerful people, especially because, Gillian Anderson's character, obviously she first popped up as I Love Lucy. She ends up popping up as David Bowie this time. And she's talking to like the tech kid and it's like, you're an idiot. The fact of the matter is doing what you did, like there's already some sparks there. You literally added gasoline, just making matters worse. So it's like Mr. World, played by Crispin Glover, is like, she's like, Mr. World wants you to apologize. Not apologize to him, apologize to essentially Mr. Wednesday and Shadow, you know, before things kind of blow out of proportion. Which I feel so bad later on, because it's one of those situations I was like, no one stepped into this room or anything. Like, the fact is, they, like, obviously inside the police station and everything, they kind of had their own way and everything. Like, they just kind of, like, all three, the tech kid, Mr. World, and obviously, like, she's Marilyn Monroe this time. And I love Shadow being like, whoa, how the fuck are you floating? It's like, that's what gets you. Like I said, it is interesting the things that you focus on, Shadow. But it's like, I feel like, yeah, no one's come yet, so it's either they were kind of like imaginary, not really here, or everyone in the police station is dead. Turns out it's the latter, everyone in the police station is dead, which kind of sucks. It's just because you were just in their way. It's like, couldn't you found like a better way to get in? It's like, I guess not. It's just kind of like, you have to make an entrance. You have to make an example. Especially because, like, Shadow was like, so how are they going to explain this? It's like, however they want to. It's like, they're powerful enough. They can make it seem like, yeah, some lunatic went in there and kind of went nuts. We don't know. Oh, he's on the run. I guess that's how they'll do it. I mean, the question is, will they even care enough to really do anything about it? But obviously we find, you know, obviously, like, as I guessed, it turns out that what, like, Mr. Wednesday's explained it to one of the cops. It's like, oh yeah, basically this is my plan. I went to get, basically, the tired god of death. Basically wanted him to join me in this fight against the fact of the matter. It's like, oh, there's all these different people who, you know, these new gods who kind of, they fear him, but they don't fear me yet. The fact of the matter is, it's like, he's kind of being run out, essentially. Obviously, like, you know, like I said, there was a whole situation, and Mr. World wants the tech kid to apologize and everything, and be sincere about it. Apologize to them like you would be apologizing to me. There better be as much sincerity. Which he got super pissed, because obviously the tech kid's like, oh yeah, the fact is, I'm sorry, I lynched you. I'm like, you're being a dick right now because you're using those words just to be spiteful and everything like that. It's like, can you not be such a little twerp piece of crap? Which I do appreciate. The fact is that, Gillian Anderson's character blew him a kiss and knocked his teeth out. I was like, that's some good crap. And also, like, that, like I say, it's kind of a trippy episode, too, because it's like, what Mr. World does, the fact of the matter is, he's like, oh, I know all this stuff about you, because all the information's basically stored in my head. He's like, the fact of the matter is, and this is what you look like when you masturbate. It's like, oh, it's the same face your mom made, and she had, like, 86 or 87 sexual partners her entire life, and then Mr. Wednesday just kind of looks, and you see, like, Shadow kind of turning to look at him, too, and it's like, he didn't have to include that, like, Mr. World didn't have to include that information, but it's just like, the fact is, he's tapping on his head, and his heads are almost like pixel. I thought that was something only the tech kid could do, like, that whole digital thing, but even the conversation between Gillian Anderson's character and him, it's just like, there's like, that kind of like, echoey effect on their voices, just kind of like, almost like at one point, like, it sounds like your talk is going through like a muffled speaker or something like that. Just, like, aesthetically, it was like a crazy episode, you know, like, obviously, everything's just kind of been set in motion to kind of be like, basically, Mr. Wednesday's wanted a war because, like, you know, like, he's tired of, like, the fact of things kind of being what they want to be. Like, it's like, we were gone, but we came back. We gave them meaning. So I'm assuming it's like, we created this world, but then we left. Like, we as gods created the world, left, and then came back, and then it's just like, well, now we want you to worship us. Like, we gave you meaning, we gave you essentially purpose. Like, you should be thanking us. But I guess it's a situation where Mr. Wednesday's like, people aren't praying to me anymore. But it's like, they're kind of got this old corporate approach. It's like I kind of nailed it. Like, I mean, I don't want to say it like that because it's not like it's such a dick. Like, oh my God, it's so good. It's like, dude, you got so much else about the show wrong. Don't give yourself credit, you piece of shit. Yes, that's welcome to my head. Nevertheless, it's like this is the new age of gods. We run things like there's a system to it. It's like the fact of the matter is they don't know whether they want small, medium, or big. But the fact of the matter is you're still ordering salsa. It's like, yeah, you think it's basically like, hey, you have choices, but you're still ordering the same thing. So it's like, yes, you have these choices, all these gods you're picking from, but it's all one gigantic system and it's all going to the same place. It's like we're turning being gods and we're turning it into a corporation where this is the new age. This is how we go about things. So it's like, basically, Mr. Wednesday isn't all about the status, bro. It's like the fact of the matter is you guys are here trying to talk to me because you're annoyed. You're like trying to get me on your side and everything because I'm that kind of, not his exact words, but kind of me paraphrasing and kind of putting in my own words. Like, oh, I'm that scratch you just can't quite get rid of. You know, he kind of basically used the sense of like, oh yeah, I'm like that little grain of sand next to a pearl inside of a oyster that you just can't quite get rid of. It's so annoying. You want to get rid of it, but you quite can't. So what Mr. Wednesday's plan is finally coming into focus. Like, I mean, because it does seem like they do have some respect for him because even like Mr. World is like, you shut up. You show this man some respect. He's older and wiser than you. Older than you will ever be. Which is like, how old are you? Obviously, you know, dropping his real name, Odin and everything. It's like, oh, you're going to have a rocket with your name on it. Like, no more just regular thunderstorms and everything. Like I said, trying to kind of put on a corporate spin of like, oh, you know, it's not like a truce because a truce would mean when we were at war at first. It's like, but the fact is you were doing your own thing. It's like, I wasn't even aware of it, but it's like, don't worry, Mr. Wednesday. I see you now and I'm here to make things better. Let's, you know, using words like merge, even though it's kind of like, I guess if you want to keep up the corporate metaphor, it's like a corporate takeover. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to absorb you into our corporation and then shut you down. But don't worry, you're going to be, you're going to get comfortably acclimated to this new situation, trying to put like a positive spin on, but like Mr. Wednesday, like, fuck you. No, I'm going to do my thing. I've got my plans. You know, cause even the tech kid's like, why are you letting him go? He's already started so much shit. You know, he's like, getting an army of monsters to fight back, yet you're letting him go. It's like, what did Mr. Wednesday do in the past that makes everyone pissed at him? Like, because even Shadow's like, who is it that you're so afraid of? And it's like, is it Mr. World or is there someone above Mr. World that you're like, because it's like, I thought Mr. World was kind of the top dog, but it's like, is he the top dog that, you know, Wednesday's afraid of? Because I thought Mr. Wednesday was at the top, but it seems like that's not the case. I mean, granted, he's older than some of the ones we've met so far, but I guess it's a situation where it's like there are still those even above him. So he might be an old god, but he's not like an old god, maybe. I think, like I said, could be completely misinterpreted that, but so like I said, still a fantastic episode. And then you had that whole weird thing at the end where it's like that tree or what the hell ever started growing from people's bodies, and it's like, okay, now Shadow's like real, like I said, you know, Mr. Wednesday wanted to kind of like, hey, ease him into it and everything, but it's like his hand was forced because his whole thing was about getting this meeting setting. It's like the only way we're going to pin Mr. Wednesday and Shadow down is if we get them arrested. So it's like now we know exactly where they'll be. I mean, we knew exactly where they'd be, but the fact of the matter is, if we came looking for them and you know, we need them kind of stuck in one specific place long enough for us to get to them, because it's like, you know, obviously Mr. Wednesday would feel us coming and kind of be on the move. That's kind of what he wanted anyway, so. Then you had Mads kind of breaking out that police car, obviously, like, coming down hard on his nuts, trying to climb out the window. I was like, I felt so bad for you, bro. And he's running off, so that's all there is to the episode. Like I said, crazy good episode, like, obviously, like, we're really kicking up the craziness of it, so I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. So, like I said, like, Shadow's kind of thrown in the deep end of things now. So, it's going to be up to him to decide what he does from here on out. And it's like, what's this mean for Laura? Like, that Shadow did. Was it, like I said, like I brought it up last time, was it all the coin or is it a combination of the coin and Shadow that kind of made it for it? Like, what is it what role does Shadow play in all of this for Mr. Wednesday? Like, obviously, he's a key component and everything. Like I said, it hasn't come up, but I still think, based on last week's episode, I do believe that Mr. Wednesday is probably the reason why Shadow got arrested in the first place. Because it's like, I need you in a specific spot. Like, maybe it's not him, maybe it's someone else, but because the whole, like, oh, he got, sent to jail. It's like, yeah, like, things, like, because even Laura was like, things normally don't work that way. It's just like, something went screwy. So I was like... And also, how much time does Laura have left? Because eventually Anubis is going to catch up to her. It's like, I thought the whole point was like, okay, you get to spend time with him, you get to meet with him, and that's it. So, is that something she's got to worry about him coming after? It's like, or not. I mean, we will just kind of have to wait and see, hopefully get some of the answers to that going forward. Like I said, very, very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episodes of Twin Peaks. A very good episode and very strange. I don't remember if I brought this up during last week's episode, but the fact of the matter is, like, Twin Peaks was already a weird show, but it's like they kicked it up to like the 11th degree. It's like, it's crazy how crazy and weird this show is, especially like what was happening with Cooper and then the lady he met with like no eyes, and then like everything that happened, it's like, oh, you should leave here before my mom comes. And I'm assuming that's coming from the second lady. And I'm guessing her mom is a thing that we see kill. I found out the dude's name is Sam, and obviously Tracy from the first episode. Because obviously, like, that ends up being a case that Gordon and Albert and a new lady, part of the team, Tammy, caught this case. Because they caught a glimpse of that figure inside of it, which is like, I wonder how much they've kind of really stepped into the realm of like the weird supernatural stuff that exists in this world. I mean, especially like, I'm sure Gordon never really had much access to it, but then there's the whole Bob situation that Albert was aware of. He was there during those times, so I'm wondering, did it cross his mind to be like, okay, like, are they a lot more open to the whole supernatural thing after everything that went down in the original series that they're at least aware of? Because obviously they don't know like what happened to Coop and everything. It comes up because they're like, Coop, where you been all these years? Because they end up running into, I mean, I'm all over the place, so I do apologize. Basically, like, Coop comes back, but apparently it was a weird trick, because basically there was another Coop who his name was Dougie, and basically this Dougie got pulled into the Black Lodge, and like, cause obviously him and Doppelganger Coop are like throwing up at the same time, but Dougie was made because it was some kind of trick, because it's like, okay, the moment Coop comes through, because obviously we learned last episode, one goes in, one comes out. Coop could only leave once the Doppelganger was pulled back in. So I guess it was ramifications for what he did, like so many of them existing in one. I don't know what it is, because they both Dougie and Coop, Doppelganger Cooper threw up like viciously. Especially Doppelganger Cooper, but like Dougie is replaced by the real Coop, but he ends up finding out later on from what, like I said, I would assume it's Mike. I don't know who he is, the one that's inside the Black Lodge talking to him. I don't know whether that's actually Mike or whether that's like the person he's possessing talking to him, but nevertheless, it's like, you were tricked, and now one of you must die, because like everything's kind of been thrown off balance. So now one of them has to die, so to kind of like restore whatever kind of balance existed. That's my understanding of it. So hopefully it's Doppelganger Cooper. It's because he fought so hard to stay in this world, but also because makes you wonder, was it Doppelganger Cooper who created this, Dougie? I mean, the weird thing is, because this Dougie also lived a life, like whether he lived a full life or whether he was a recent creation, or maybe he's been created, maybe he's existed his entire time, like over these past 25 years, maybe Doppelganger Coop created, or maybe someone else. If someone else is playing their own game, and it's just like, it's hard to say, like, obviously, bringing comparisons to the original series, kind of making the metaphor of a chessboard, it's like, it's hard to say, like, where all the chess pieces lie and what moves are being made, because it's kind of almost like a magic trick. You look over here, and while you're over here being distracted by this one thing, all the magic is happening over here. So obviously Cooper's taking on Dougie's life, but Cooper isn't really himself. He's kind of scattered brain, like he's almost like a zombie. Like he's repeating what people say to him, not really registering a lot of stuff. Except like the only moments you see him as Cooper is when he's at like Dougie's, I don't know, his wife or girlfriend's house. And then he's just kind of like her son, Sonny, which I don't think that's Dougie's son. It might be her son, and maybe like her and Dougie were boyfriend and girlfriend. I mean, maybe it actually is Dougie's son, which would like make things super depressing if that was the case. But nevertheless, like his name's Sonny, and he just kind of gives him a smile and a thumbs up, and then Cooper kind of does the same thing, obviously his signature move, and then he's drinking some hot coffee and he spits it out and everything, but he's got a huge smile on his face. So like there's a little remnants of who Cooper is there, but not quite. And there's a whole thing in the casino where he's winning money and everything, which is like he knows which machines are going to like hit, because there's like a little tear, like it shows you a little bit into like the Black Lodge, and it's popping up above machines. It's like, oh, this one will hit, and he ends up jackpotting like 30 times. Like he gets like the mega jackpot. Like I said, like, it's some kind of trap played out by somebody. Who exactly, I don't know. And, like, why is it because it wasn't really, like, a true, like, switch? That the reason why Cooper's in the state that he's in? Because at least when he was in the Black Lodge, it seemed like he was Cooper. Like, he didn't speak much, but at least it seemed like he was cognitive as Cooper. But now that he's here, it's like something, like there's a malfunction in his system. It's like the data and like that represents who he is. Like I guess you could argue almost like his soul's been corrupted, or more so like his soul and mind or something has been corrupted, and he's not quite him. And I don't know, because also like later on in the episode, like obviously like Gordon and Albert find out about Cooper getting locked up in a federal prison, and they go visit him, and they're having a conversation with him, but he's like, oh yeah, like I've been undercover this entire time. But the way he's talking, the way he's acting, like he's not even faking it as Cooper. And it's just like, did whatever happened to him in his car when he had his accident, and like obviously throwing up violently like that, did it do something to it? Or is he trying, like, is it because these are people who are familiar with Cooper? So it's because you could tell, it's like, obviously I was like, I can't tell whether he's trying to emulate being Cooper. He's like, oh yeah, because it's like, I'm trying to be human. Or was he just doing that, just trying to talk like, oh, to an extent that Gordon can understand him very slowly and enunciating more. But it seems like I want to go with the former rather than the latter. Maybe it's a combination of the two, but it's like, obviously they're not quite buying it, because like there's something wrong with this, and they're like, yeah, there's only one person that'll be able to tell us like what's really going on with that, because they had the suspicion that like that's not Cooper, something's off there. And so it's like, oh yeah, there's one person who'll be able to tell us, like, oh, do you know where she lives? And it's like, yeah. So immediately my mind goes, Annie, because we don't know what the whole situation is, because obviously where Cooper and her left off. But at the same time, it's like maybe Audrey, like that's kind of my other thought. And then there's other part of me that's like, maybe even Sarah Palmer, simply because Sarah is, has visions just like Coop did. But more so than anything, I feel like Annie, because Annie and Cooper were close, but also Audrey is like, had her thing with Cooper, like, her special FBI agent, so like I said, my money's on Annie, but I'm like, keeping my mind open if it turns out to be Audrey. But it's like, because the thing is, like, we're still trying to fill in the gaps of, like, what happened in those, like, 25, 26 years that have passed. I think it is 25 years that have passed. It's like, we know that subsequently, because we learned from Bobby, which, yes, Bobby, he's a freaking deputy? I was like, what? Shut up. I was like, really? Troublemaker Bobby? But then again, it's like, well, he probably turned his life around and tried to do good, especially between him and his dad. So maybe that probably helped with that whole situation. But it's like, dude, that's crazy to me. That like he's a freaking deputy now. It's weird. But he ends up bringing up the fact is that Cooper visited Garland, his dad, like some years ago, like before his dad ended up dying. His dad ended up dying in a fire like sometime later. But it was like, what did him and your dad talk about? And obviously we know it wasn't, I mean, at least to my knowledge, it wasn't like Cooper. It was like fake Cooper. Because like they still keep you on the edge of your seat, because it's like they're not telling you directly like, oh yeah, this and happened. It's a very all over the place story where it seems like once everything's kind of revealed, then you can finally start lining other pieces to like the state of events of like this happened and this happened and this happened, like, you know, which is, I mean, isn't a bad thing. It's just kind of like, I that's the thing about mysteries. I love them, but at the same time, I'm like, shut up and give me answers. I need to understand everything, which maybe when it's all, hopefully when it's all said and done, like I said, all the pieces will kind of fall into place. And it's like, that's what this has all been about. This is what it represents and stuff like that. Side note, I gotta admit, like, there are so many damn actors in this show. Like, obviously, rewatching the original series. It's like, there's some actors that are like, oh, I'm more familiar with stuff that you've done recently, so it's interesting. It's going back in time and seeing you, like, all this stuff. And, like, obviously, one of the best examples is Machinomic. I'm sure I'm butchering her name. But obviously, like, I subsequently rewatched, season 2 before, I mean, or the entirety of Twin Peaks before the new season. So it's like, I know her from, like, Witches of East End. Obviously, she popped up on, like, you know, other things. Obviously, most recent thing being Riverdale, which is, like, very Twin Peaks-like. So it's so interesting. And it's not just her, but other actors, too. But now it's like, oh, these are actors I'm familiar with. Like, I swear, like, one of the ladies that, Cooper ran into at the casino, I could swear that was, like, Sarah Paxton, and the actor that was beside her, I feel like I recognize him. There's also 2 actors from The Walking Dead. There's the actor who plays Eugene and the actor who played Richard were in this too, little small roles that he popped out. I was like, wait, what? And also, too, it's something else I was kind of wondering, too, really quickly changing the subject is, I was wondering, because obviously, as you know, the original show had, like, this quirky, like, somewhat comedy side to it. I don't know if they went out of their way to try and make it funny, but, like, it had a quirky side to it. I was like, okay, this show's still, obviously, got the weird aspect, but, like, you know, bumped up like crazy. Like, but it does still have that quirky side, and it's like, yes, because of that whole conversation with Hulk, Andy, and Lucy, and then, like, she's like, Hulk's like, okay, what's missing? And then Lucy, she goes, oh! She's like, I ate the chocolate bunny. And you're like, wait, what? And then Hulk's like, wait, Lucy, you ate evidence? She's like, I couldn't help it. She's basically like, I had gas. And she's like, I heard chocolate will fix that. And he's like, it doesn't have anything to do with the chocolate bunny. Wait, or does it? No, it doesn't. Like, even Hulk's not 100% sure. And I also love the fact that he's like, oh, it has to have something to do with my heritage. And Lucy's like, you're Indian, Hulk. And he's like, yes, Lucy, yes, I am. Also, we got a little more clarification on the Sheriff Truman department. I was under the impression it's like, oh, it's a father and son situation where it's like Harry's the father and obviously he had a son. It's like, oh, no, apparently it's brothers because obviously they get visited by Andy's son. God, Andy's nephew. God, I did it again. What the hell is wrong with me? Andy and Lucy's son, Wally, played by Michael Cera, which is like, what? More familiar faces. But he was basically like, oh, I'm here to, you know, I hear that your brother's not in good health. I'm like, wait, what? It's like, I was like, oh, because I was like, I just assumed it was a different actor who played Harry. That's what my impression was. But it's like, oh, I heard that Harry S. Truman is sick. And I'm like, oh, I mean, I think they did that intentionally misleading you because they could have been like, oh, yeah, brothers. It's like, no, like I instinctively went father and son simply because it's like, it never came up before that Harry had a brother. But then again, it's like a lot of the characters' past and stuff like that was never really delved too deeply into. I mean, it's been a while since I saw Fire Walk With Me, but obviously most of that was about Laura. I mean, a little bit here and there about other people, but more so that was like Laura's story. So it never came up. The only person whose past you ever really delved heavily into was like Cooper's, of course. So, I mean, kind of benefit of being main protagonist, I guess. When it involves, Sheriff Truman and like he's on the cell phone and Lucy talking is like, oh, I can't hear you. But the fact of the matter is like someone just walked in. I'm gonna have to talk to you later. Sheriff Truman. She turns around and it's him there with his cell phone. And she's like, ah, and passes out. And Andy's like, it happened again, didn't it? It's like, yep. And he basically she got freaked out. He's like, Sheriff Truman's like, I'm sorry, Andy. Like the connection got lost a while ago, and I couldn't just stand out there all night. And Andy's talking to her later, like, honey, like, why is this happening? Like, you're so good at your job and everything, and you understand how phones work, right? They're mobile nowadays. Like, Sheriff Truman could be anywhere when he's talking to you, and it's like, what? But honey, why does this keep happening? And she's like, I don't know why this keep happening. Also, like, the sheriff's department kind of like expanded. Like, there was a few like other cops you got to see in the original series, but you never really got to know them. I feel like you caught glimpses of faces and during conversations and stuff like that, but it's like never, I don't know, it never really was a big thing, but I feel like you see more people associate with the department. There's even a dude named Chad who like is super against everything because it's like they bring up Margaret. It's like, oh yeah, she gets information from her log and everything, and he's just like, okay, whatever. So obviously he's a little less reluctant about this whole like, oh, like I guess you'd only really know if you were a part of, like, you know, Twin Peaks originally with every weird thing that was going down. It's like, obviously, out of anyone, Hawk is the most open-minded about things. But I think the others are kind of open-minded, too, because, you know, they realize that the log lady has helped out, you know, Margaret has helped out in the past, so. Oh, I can't also forget the fact of the matter is, like, we also saw Denise pop up, which I was so excited about. Like, because I literally mentioned Denise last episode, and lo and behold, pops up. It was kind of an interesting conversation between her and Gordon, because she ended up bringing up something like, well, Gordon brought up the fact is that basically when Denise was originally Dennis, like, he had sent Dennis to work undercover at the DEA, which then my brain goes, wait a minute, does that mean back in the original series during the whole investigating Coop situation plus, you know, the whole John Renault situation, is like, was she undercover then too? Was she like digging up dirt on the DEA or some situation like that? So is that why things kind of worked a little smoothly? Why she was more on Coop's side than probably most everyone else? Was simply because it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, Gordon sent me to kind of make sure things kind of go your way in this situation. I don't know, or was she already like no longer undercover and she was just working DEA then? I mean, now she's like chief of secretary of over the FBI or something like that, and she's warning Gordon like, yeah, oh, the fact of the matter is you bringing along the new Tammy Preston. She's like the new, I don't know whether she's like new blood of part of the FBI, but she's someone that Gordon's bringing on. He's like, I'm not like that. He's like, the fact of the matter is, Denise, there was a lot of stuff you did back in the day when you were Dennis. I had plenty of dirt I could have thrown your way, but I didn't. Why? Because you were a fine agent. You still are one today. So kind of also flattering her a bit and like, oh, there's plenty of room in the FBI for two beautiful women. And just being like, so was it out of jealousy that she was just kind of like, oh, don't let some other pretty lady go along with you? I mean, like, to me, I was interpreting it as like, oh, like, Gordon's a bit of an old dog and he might try and make some moves on her or something, like, you know, something inappropriate or something. That's how, but I don't, like I said, everything is very, very confusing. Because, like, obviously there's a thing with the whole Cooper situation. I mean, Doppelganger Cooper, where it's like, Albert brings up, like, basically he brings up, like, this guy named Philip Jeffries. It's like, yep, I was working undercover with him. But then, like, Albert kind of brings up, it's like, yeah, I gave Albert Jeffries some information because he said because Coop was in trouble. So that's kind of his only interaction possibly with Cooper. But he had talked to Cooper directly. It was kind of a pass along the message type of situation. So it's like, what does that have to do with this whole situation? Because it's like I said, like, Albert and Gordon are not, like, on bar with this, like, situation. They're like, yeah, something's up with Cooper. He didn't talk to me like he normally would have, or, you know, greeted me like he normally would. He's not, you know, his usual Cooper self anyway, so something's off in that department. So just overall, it's a weird situation where it's like, I don't know where everything is going. Like, and once again, we're still not even in Twin Peaks. We pop in every once in a while, but it's not like the story is like it's outside. Like I said, I get the feeling it's going to start outside and then close in, but still, like, that surprised me. I thought it was like, now like the introduction of kind of, like, I guess there's still so much left to do. So I want to understand, like, what is this all about? What is it that Doppelganger Cooper is trying to accomplish with everything? They also brought up, like, oh yeah, like, isn't that in South Dakota? Yeah, or was that somewhere else? No, that was South Dakota. The murders that the lady, what's her name, Ruth, her head and that body, they're like, oh yeah, we got a fingerprint from the Jane Doe, but we can't, like, not Jane Doe, the John Doe, but it's like, we can't get any information from it because it's like, oh yeah, it's military authorized. So I'm like, initially my brain goes, is that supposed to be Briggs' body? Like, was his body actually taken from the fire? Like, it made it look like he died in the fire or something like that. But I feel like if that was his body, like, you would have known that was, not unless his body was dug up by Cooper and then because like Bobby brings it up after that meeting, like, no one's heard hide nor hair from Cooper or seen him. You know, that was the last time Bobby ever saw him either. So, and also seeing him break down in front of like the whole, like he saw a picture of Laura and it broke, like he started breaking down, I guess because it's like, I mean, for him, it's like it brought back so many memories. Also, what does that mean for him and Shelley? I mean, him and Shelley aren't together anymore. I guess things kind of fell apart there. I don't know. I'm also wondering, will we ever really get to know everything? It's like, maybe this is kind of its own, like, story. It's like, oh, we took that, we're picking up where the story left off. We're not going to worry about the in-between. We'll fill you in along the way, but it's like, that's not the main focus, I would assume. It's just like telling this weird, crazy story that's just, like I said, we still, the thing from the glass box, we don't know what the hell that was. Like obviously the FBI's aware of it now, but it's like, we don't know what that was, or, you know, who specifically was telling them. Like, obviously Sam was like, yeah, this is a government job. I'm supposed to take care of this box. I don't know what's supposed to pop up. And also, why didn't Cooper pop up on it? Maybe it's because Sam was out of the room at that time and it didn't record, or maybe the recordings were messed with. Because the thing is, like I brought up last episode, I got the feeling like that thing was chasing Cooper because Cooper popped up first. And then afterwards, after Cooper left again, Sam and Tracy came into the room and then they did their thing and then they were brutally murdered afterwards. So then there's a whole like little thing with Jacoby, like painting his shovels gold. It's like, what? It's like we're getting little things and I don't know what that means, what that's supposed to represent. I also like the fact is that Cooper does have the Great Northern, key to his room still in his pocket. It was just like, well, that would make sense that he would still have that on him because, like, when he went out to deal with the whole Wyndham Earl situation because he had Annie, I'm sure, like, you know, you'd always keep your room key on you like that. So that was kind of one thing pulled out of his pocket. Also, like, there's this whole situation with Dougie, which I guess he owes a lot of people money because those guys were trying to kill him. Like, the guy pulled his gun out, but it's like, he didn't see Cooper, like, duck down trying to, like, he luckily dropped his key because if he didn't, his head probably would have gotten blown off when that lady he was spending time with, I think her name was Jade, was driving him to the casino to get help. And so, weird and crazy episode, and I'm very excited to see what kind of goes down in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.